As mentioned earlier in the Torah service, our Parasha this week is Chukat, which stands for the Ordinances of. And it comes from the book of Numbers, chapter 19, chapter 1, to chapter 22, verse 1. Haftarah portion, our prophet portion this week was taken out of the book of Judges, chapter 11, verses 1 through 33. And our Chadasha portion this week came out of the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 10 through 21. One of the things that we find as we go through a lot of these different parashas is a continuing theme here. And it's that Israel has the habit of rejecting those whom God has chosen to lead. And as such, they grumble against God and they grumble against Moses, but in reality, they are rebelling against God. Anytime as a person in God, whom God has given authority to, when people speak against you, they're really speaking against God. Because God is ultimately who is in authority. No one else is. And it doesn't matter which generation of Israelites we look at as we go through the history of Israel, they still rebel against the Lord, their God, in which they find themselves in a perilous situation, and only then do they realize the consequences for their faithlessness. And this is a recurrent theme. I mean, we just, 2 weeks back, had the portion of Korah. Korah was a Levite. In fact, he was the descendant of the Levites who were given the privilege of carrying the ark and the Holy of Holies as they traveled through the wilderness. But he wanted to be the priest. Don't you have enough responsibility under God? Ain't that enough? And yet this week we have Chukat, and it's the statutes of. And God, in the beginning of this parasha, institutes the ordinance of the red heifer. And it's because he knows that people will fall into uncleanness, despite the fact of what they do, not to. And normally it's accidental. I mean, when we speak of the red heifer in the manner that they spoke of in the Torah here, is as of someone who touched a dead body. And therefore they become what's called secondary unclean. And the red heifer's ashes mixed with water that they sprinkle upon them removes this uncleanness from them after they have immersed themselves in water and their clothes as well. Okay? So the red heifer is a symbolic immersion in the purity of that which was sacrificed. And do we not do that symbolic immersion every time that we come before the Lord when we have stumbled and fallen and no longer are we in that state of righteousness that God has put us in through the sacrifice of His blood, that we must come back unto Him and to gain that re-cleansing, that re-sanctification? Whether we did it in purpose or not. A lot of times we fall into sin, not because we choose to fall into sin. It's because we find ourselves being led into it or stumbling upon it because we're not paying attention, not being focused on God and His things as we should be. And in Numbers 20, verses 3 through 6, it states, "And the people quarreled with Moses, saying, If only we had died when our brothers died before Adonai." Now they're returning back to that part when God took out those that were in league with Korah in his rebellion. "Now why have you brought the community of Adonai into this wilderness, for us and our livestock to die here? Why have you brought us from Egypt to bring us to this evil place, a place without grain, fig, grapevine, or pomegranate, and there is no water to drink?" And so Moses and Aaron went from before the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. Then the glory of Adonai appeared to them. It's amazing. Every time God leads them to a place He wants them to camp out, it's never right. It never has what they think it ought to have in it. There's no porta toilets there. There's no Burger King next door where they can get a hamburger. God, You may be the God of all creation. You may have created the earth, but You had known nothing about choosing a campsite. Where are all the privileges? Where are all the perks? You're in the wilderness. God puts you in the wilderness because He wants you to become dependent on Him, not to become self-sufficient in your own dependency. There's a difference. And from the experiences that the children of Israel go through, every time He leads them to a place where they see it as something unbefitting them, what is necessary is just right under the surface, if they have faith that God will provide that which they need. And you know, normally when we read these accounts, these narratives, it is the matter of water. Water is one of the greatest matters. And of course, you're in a desert situation where water is very valuable to the maintaining of life. But do you really think in His all-knowing presence, created you Himself, would not realize that you would have to have water in order to survive? But what He wants you to see is the water that can't be seen. He wants you to see that living water that flows from Him. And if you trust in the living water, the true water, or the physical water will always be available for you. Because He will lead you to it. Or He will bring it forth Himself. And this is what He wanted to perform before the children of Israel. You're in the midst of an entire arid situation. Yet in the midst of all this, I can bring water from rock. I created the world. I can do all things because of whom I am. And yet the people grumble against Moses and against God. And Moses has heard this grumbling since the time he left Egypt. And I mean, he's just sick of it. He's heard enough. And you know how it is. It's like having children that just will not shut up when you tell them to. It gets on your nerves. As they say, they pluck their last nerve. And what happens? Normally you will release that pent-up anger, agitation, and frustration in a way that you would not normally want to present it. It comes forth as wrath, or it comes forth as anger, and typically comes forth as self-exaltation. And this is what happened with Moses and Aaron. They were sick of hearing the children of Israel grumble against God and against them. Oh, you've led us out here, Moses. You got the wrong map when you left the Esso station in Egypt. You should have got the right map. That was the old map. No. God led Moses exactly where He wanted to go. Moses was faithful enough to follow God exactly where He said to go. And you ought to have enough faith in God Almighty to know that He has brought you forth in order to bring you to a better place. But you don't. And so Moses in his humanity, it shows his humanity. He loses it. We all know the story. God told him to speak to the rock. Command water to come from the rock and the people will see the glory of God. But what does he do? He gets up, he takes the staff of Aaron from out the ark and whacks that rock 3 times. And he makes the wrong statement when he does that. Would you have me to bring you water from this rock? Now who did the glory go to?
Moses. It's like God.
Did he really mean it like that? Or was it like, are you always so worried about what I'm going to do for you? Would you have me to do this? Now don't you say that to children when they get on your nerves? Moses is surrounded by 2-year-olds who are in Pampers. They need to be in pull-ups. They can pull themselves up. But they're not. Yes, it's funny. Yes, I put in a comical situation, but it's the truth of the matter. And it causes Moses to have a decline from his spirituality. He loses his focus. He loses his discipline in whom God has called him to be. And he acts out of his humanity. He acts out of his humanness, his nature, his sinful nature. And it cost him a dire consequence. He loses the ability to cross and walk the promised land. You understand that? He loses the very blessing that God wants to bestow upon him because he succumbs to his humanity. And this is the fact that most believers can't get through their heads when they do these things. We all do these things. We all lose control. We're still human. What does Peter tell us? 1 Peter? This outward tent is perishing daily. That tells you something. This outward tent is dying. This outward tent is fallible. It will get to you. It will cause you to do things that your inward tent will not. It causes us to be who we are. We're still sinners saved by grace. That's the basic bottom line. The difference is when we choose to truly follow Adonai, we focus our lives on Him. We focus our strength through Him. And it enables us to walk in a way that may seem like we're above others. But it's not that we believe that or even think that. We just understand who we are in God. And therefore God can use us to do the things He would have us to do. And we all do these things. I had a minister one time, he got real frustrated. You know, he let a couple words fly. The whole congregation went back like somebody hit him with an AR rocket. And he said, "Well, you didn't get phased." I said, "No, you're a human being, right?" I said, "Lucky they didn't do that to me. I may have told him a whole lot more." You're a human being. Even Moses is a human being. We always exalt Moses as the prime example of a follower of Adonai. One who is so humble in his life. He was the humblest of all men. In his meekness, he was supreme above all others. So God would reveal Himself face to face as one talks with a friend. Oh, Moses was still a man, first and foremost. And even in these situations, his humanity will come forth. And yet God doesn't steal or deny him that salvation. God doesn't deny him who He is. But there is a consequence for when we have a failure. And it's because it teaches us to become more focused in what we're doing. To realize that it is serious what God has called us to do. This is no play game. This is life. Moses didn't lose his salvation. Moses didn't even lose his position as the leader over the children of Israel as they went through the desert. But Moses knows what his future will hold. Moses knows there is a consequence for the way he rebelled against God. And in a moment when he could have let the fullness of the glory of God reflect itself to the entirety of the children of Israel, he stole from it and claimed it for himself. You see what I'm saying? But does this, and this is why we don't even go a chapter back further in, and there they are grumbling against Moses and God again. But this time Moses doesn't succumb to grumbling. Moses doesn't succumb to the stress. In fact, Moses just stays cool. And he allows God to take care of it. And God sends serpents out amongst the people to bite them. And they're dying. I think it's interesting that God chooses a symbol that is so ancient to humankind to recognize what is within their heart. Moses, make a fiery bronze serpent. Place it upon a pole and elevate it above the earth. And all who look upon it and gaze upon it will be saved. The serpent. The same serpent who deceived Adam and Eve. You see, when we grumble and stuff, it's because we're deceived in who we think we are. We think we deserve all these things because God has chosen us. We think, God ought to, take us to the Howard Johnson's or something where there's a 4-star hotel and put us up in the luxury suite. God is there. It says, I will take care of your needs. Follow me. What's your needs? Food, clothing, place over your head. You don't need to rest. That's just all gravy, as an old friend I used to work with said. Rest is gravy. It means it's something you can sop up and keep for yourself. God don't give gravy. God has a gravy-free diet. Okay? And when he does give you that, it's because he wants you to give it to somebody else. And so we have the people again in chapter 21. And we've come across the bronze serpent there. And they traveled from Mount Hor along the route of the Sea of Reeds in order to go around the land of Edom. And the spirit of the people became impatient. Understand it? Impatient. Numbers 21, verses 4 through 9 along the way. And the people spoke against God and Moses. Why have you brought us from Egypt to die in the wilderness? Because there's no bread. Kid again. There's no bread. There's no water. And our very spirits detest this despicable food. What is this stuff? And so Adonai sent poisonous serpents among the people. And they bit the people. And many of the people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, we sinned against Adonai and you. Pray to Adonai for us, that he might take away the snakes. So Moses prayed for the people. And Adonai said to Moses, make yourself a fiery snake. Put it on a pole. Whenever anyone who has been bitten will look at it, he will live. And so Moses made a bronze snake, put it on a pole. And it happened that whenever a snake bit anyone, and he looked at that bronze snake, he lived. A serpent lifted on a pole was the salvation of the people, because it forced them to recognize and take ownership of the sin of deception that they had continued to walk in, just like their parents had in the Garden of Eden. Deceived into thinking that they were holy and entitled to God's favor, yet forgetting their need to trust in His judgment and timing to reveal all things. Just like Adam and Eve in the garden, who became impatient on waiting on Adonai to reveal all that the tree of the knowledge of the good and evil contained within its fruit, the children of Israel became impatient in reaching the promised land, the land that was flowing with milk and honey, that would be easy and sweet for them to live by, and whereby Adonai provides through Moses, which will deliver them from their rebellion, the bronze serpent. See, even in the Haftarah portion that we find, which is looked upon as inferior, is the very thing that is needed to deliver. As God's own, there is a tendency to view ourselves as better than others because we have answered Adonai's call to grace and followed Him from the bondage of our sinful nature to the purification of our nature through Him who has provided the redemptive cost. But in Judges we find the half-breed son of Gilead, which is rejected by his legitimate brothers and casted out from the family in order to keep it pure. But when real trouble comes upon them in the form of the Ammonites, who have made war with Israel and have them surrounded, that the only true warrior descent of Gilead, Jephthah, is begged to come home and become the leader and deliverer from the children of Ammon. Judges 11:1 through 3. Now Jephthah the Gilead was a mighty man of valor, but he was the son of a prostitute. While Gilead was Jephthah's father, but Gilead's wife bore him sons. And when the wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out of them and said to him, you won't inherit our father's house, for you are a son of another woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. And some worthless fellows joined with Jephthah and went out with him. Jephthah, you aren't Jewish enough for us. Therefore, we cannot accept you or allow you to inherit your father's house. How could we ever allow a mamzer to become the head of the house of a savior of Israel? How Messianic of them, as they will not recognize Jephthah's right as the firstborn because of his mother and her reputation. Yet when they need a true deliverer, one who can defend them, one who can remove the peril of their lives, is it one of the sons of the wife who leads them? Or is it that they call the son of the prostitute to deliver and to rule over them? Ironic, don't you think? What we find in Judges 11:4 through 11. Now it came about after a while that the children of Ammon fought with Israel. And when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to fetch Jephthah from the land of Tob. And they said to Jephthah, "Come and be our chief, so we might fight the children of Ammon." Well, let's stop for a second. If you have all these other brothers who are the descendants of Gilead, who are the leaders of this tribe, where is the leader among them? Where is the one who is the direct warrior descendant of their father? And you know who we're talking about here, right? Gideon. Where is his direct descendant? Where is the one who has inherited his father's courage and boldness? They were courageous enough to throw the first son out, who was not really the first son. But it seems to me the only son that had any of the courage of his father was the one that they casted out. And now they recognize their need. We need him. We don't have the courage to defend ourselves. You know, there's something else in this. They never speak of calling upon God. They never once called upon the name of the Lord their God and asked them for a deliverer. They never once called out to God to deliver them from these things. But Jephthah, before he goes to encounter the Ammonites, makes a vow before God. He understands who will give him the victory. He understands where real courage and real victory comes from. He understands this is the son of the concubine. This is the son of the prostitute. However you want to look at it. This is the son of disfavor. But yet he is the son who knows who his deliverer is. This is the son who knows who has the real victory. And he leads his brethren into victory against their enemies. And yet even in this symbolic Messianic view, there is still humanity involved. Because even Jephthah, even in his rightness of seeking God before the battle, even in his rightness to be apologized and recognized who he was among his brethren, he himself spoke too soon before God. When he makes the vow, whatever comes out the door of my house to greet me, when I return from the victory, I will offer it unto you as an elevation offering. Now you got to understand, an elevation offering is a burnt offering. That means it's typically a bull or a ram or a sheep that is offered upon the altar of God to be burnt holy. Okay? Lord, whatever comes out the front door of my house to greet me, I'm going to put it on the altar for you. It's humanity. Because he's not thinking with the focus of God. He's thinking with the focus of his own heart. Now I know we didn't read it in the rest of the Haftarah portion, but when Jephthah comes back to his home after bringing the defeat of the Ammonites, the first thing out of the front door of his house is his only daughter. And she comes out praising God for the victory. And his heart falls from him because he now understands the consequences of the rashness of his vow. You know, Yeshua told us, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't vow, don't make promises against something that doesn't belong to you.